Good morning, everyone. Good morning to all my students. Good morning to anyone watching. Last week, I asked you guys to create an artwork based on something that you were experiencing or something that you were noticing going on around you. This week, we're going to get a little bit more technical. We're going to create something called a still life. I want you to think about something that you have around your house, any object that is meaningful to you, and I want you to set up um, one light on top of it. You guys can see this apple right here on the top drawing. It's showing one light source, and what that does is it gives you a really nice directional light, which means it's going to show, obviously it's going to show where the highlights are, wherever the light's coming from, and it's going to give you nice shadows. Okay, so this has a little bit more technical art related to it. We're going to focus on the values. Those are called values. The highlights, the shadows, and whatever is left over is going to be called the midtones. Okay, so I want you guys to find one object. It could be a toy, it could be um, a pizza, I don't know. But I want you to set up one light source and choose kind of a direction where it's going to come from. You guys can see in this bottom image, uh, the right side is where the light is coming from. You know, the top, you can see where the highlights are. And on that left side, where the shadows are kind of getting long there, that's where it's away from the light. So that's where the shadows are. And anything else like in between are considered the midtones. Okay, I'll show you my setup here in a second. I also wanted to show you guys some still lifes that I did. There's one, I think it's right here. So this is a still life that I did of toilet paper recently. Um, and I did the same thing. I set it up, you guys can see the top. I set it up on that chair, and I had one light coming from the right side, and I used that light to kind of show the turning of the form, and I show those three values. Okay, um, so there's a couple of benefits to doing still life. One is that you're not just copying something from a photograph, and you're not just making it up, right? You're actually observing, you're building your skills to observe things. You're getting better at noticing details. You're getting better at getting the shapes right. Um, you're getting better at reacting from life instead of imitating from photograph. Okay? Second is whenever I do something like this, I always find myself going through the flow state, which means it's almost like therapeutic. It's like you're going into this really focused zone, and it's a great outlet for you to do on the daily. It's like playing an instrument, you know, in a lot of ways. Those are things that are creative outlets for a lot of people. So I hope this helps you guys in a lot of ways. So I'm going to show you guys my setup here. Actually, let me show you some examples I have too. Last week, some of you guys joined me on Instagram, and you guys helped me choose, my students, you guys helped me choose this water bottle to portray with paint. So keep in mind, you guys might not all have paint, you might not all have color pencils. Whatever you do have, you can choose your object, and you can also choose your materials. But this is what we did last week. And you guys, we started with defining big areas. We have shadows in the background. These are kind of like midtones, and then you guys can see all the little highlights on the bottle. Okay, so in each image, I want you guys to try to get those three. Okay, shadows, highlights, and the midtones. Okay, it's easy if you go for the darkest parts and then understand where the lighter parts are, and then the rest are kind of like the in-betweens. Here's another one, nail polish. And the reason why you want to do all three of those, it creates a nice range of those values. It helps it helps the highlights pop up from the shadows. What I've been doing is kind of like the style that Renaissance artists, those older artists used to do, and they would create this dramatic lighting in the background, and it really pushes the objects forward. Okay, it makes them pop, makes them look like 3D. Um, so let's take a look here. I have my camera set up. So you guys can see my basic setup here. There's a light that's shining down from one direction on top of this camera. That's why the top here is lit up. You see the highlights on the top, and then the shadows on the sides here. And this is a fairly complicated object. Um, so the way I would do this is break down some of the shapes. You guys can see I would draw this first as one shape, and then draw the cylinder here as the lens as a cylinder as one shape, and then this little square as a shape, and then at the end start adding details. So I'm going to show you guys a quick kind of a run through. Everyone's work is going to look different, so you guys do it how you can, okay? Don't overthink it. So you guys can see in my quick demonstration here, I did kind of go through it quickly, so some of the shapes are, they could be a lot better. But I do want you guys to understand, I focused on the lights, trying to get shadows in there, certain areas, right? Like here, making some of the shadows pop. This one, making it dark. And then getting some midtones in there. And then at the end, highlights. You guys can see this area being a bit brightest. You can even go in there with an eraser and erase to make the highlights pop a little bit. So let's go in there with an eraser there. There's some there. Maybe just right along this lens. I can make the highlights pop a little bit. Maybe right on the edges of the center top here. And the button has some highlights. Boom, boom. I didn't go into too much detail, but try to get the basic shapes there. Whenever I try to shade, I try to shade to the form too. So if it's a round object, I try to go the way it's turning. I try to shade to the way it's turning. So you guys, please, for the second week, create some sort of art based on one object that's meaningful to you, or it could be just something funny. But I want you to observe this week. So look at something from life instead of using your imagination or photographs. And with your description, some of you guys have already been doing this. It would be really awesome to get a description on why you chose that object and what it means to you. Alright guys, let me know if you have any questions. Have a great week.